6 out of 10 Americans start their day with coffee, trusting it to wake them up. Yet most have no clue their beloved brew could be laced with pesticides, mold toxins, and trace chemicals used in paint stripper. Coffee is one of the world's most chemically treated crops, and thanks to weak regulations on imports, even banned substances can end up in your cup. If you've ever scooped from a familiar red tub or tossed a convenient pod into the machine, you might be sipping a chemical cocktail you would never knowingly choose. By the end of this investigation, 5 everyday brands stand exposed, and you will never look at your morning routine the same way. So how did coffee become America's most dangerous daily ritual? Coffee's dangers begin after harvest. Stored for months in humid warehouses, beans become targets for mold. This is where ochratoxin A, or OTA, enters the story, a toxin produced by certain fungi. OTA is more than a laboratory concern. It's classified by the European Food Safety Authority as a possible carcinogen and a proven kidney toxin in animal studies. Roasting, often thought to destroy contaminants, only partially reduces OTA. Scientific reviews show that roasting can lower OTA by as little as 10%, sometimes up to 70% or 80%, but never eliminates it. Some always survives, making its way into the cup. Surveys from dozens of countries consistently detect OTA in over half of all coffee samples, with most levels below the European legal limit of 5 micrograms per kilogram, but occasional batches exceed this, especially when beans are poorly stored or processed. For regular coffee drinkers, OTA exposure adds up. While cereals and wine are the main sources in most diets, coffee can contribute up to 30% of worst-case adult OTA exposure, enough to keep regulators vigilant. A different hazard forms during roasting itself. Acrylamide, a probable human carcinogen under California's Proposition 65, is created through a reaction between natural sugars and the amino acid asparagine. Instant coffee is especially high in acrylamide, with European and U.S. surveys finding levels around 150 micrograms per kilogram, often double or triple what's found in regular ground coffee. The spray drying process that produces instant crystals concentrates not just flavor, but also contaminants. While the cancer risk from coffee's acrylamide is considered lower than that from fried snacks, there's no established safe level for a substance that forms so easily in a daily ritual. In the end, the chemistry of mold and heat leaves a mark. OTA survives the roast. Acrylamide forms in an instant. Both ride along in every CUP, shaped by choices made in warehouses and roasting plants long before the first sip. Decaf coffee often comes with a hidden ingredient few buyers ever consider. To strip caffeine from green coffee beans on an industrial scale, many producers turn to methylene chloride, a chemical better known for its role in paint removers and industrial degreasers. The process is efficient and cheap. Beans are soaked in methylene chloride, which bonds to the caffeine and pulls it out. Afterward, the beans are rinsed and roasted, but traces of the solvent can remain. The United States Food and Drug Administration sets a legal limit of 10 parts per million for methylene chloride residue in decaf coffee. Industry data and regulatory samples usually show finished beans well below this cap, but the presence of any paint stripper chemical in a morning ritual is enough to make some consumers uneasy. The FDA's own code, CFR Section 173.255, spells out the rules, but it doesn't require companies to disclose which decaf method they use on the label. As a result, most shoppers have no idea whether their bargain decaf was processed with water, carbon dioxide, or a chlorinated solvent. Consumer advocacy groups like the Clean Label Project have tested dozens of decaf coffees and found detectable methylene chloride in several mainstream brands. While these residues almost always fall within legal limits, the question lingers, why allow any chronic solvent exposure at all, especially when safer methods like the Swiss water process exist? The European Union, too, permits solvent-based decaf under strict residue controls, but the trend among health-conscious buyers is clear: avoidance. The solvent route persists not because it's best for health, but because it's the cheapest way to produce a mass-market decaf. In the next act, specific brands and products will come under the microscope, but the foundation is set. For many Americans, what's marketed as a gentler cup is actually laced with the chemical few would knowingly add to their breakfast. Folgers has been a fixture in American kitchens for generations. The red tub is everywhere, on supermarket shelves, in office break rooms, stacked high at warehouse clubs. What most shoppers never realize is that Folgers relies on conventional, non-organic beans grown on sprawling industrial farms across Central and South America. These plantations use a chemical arsenal to keep weeds and pests at bay: glyphosate, chlorpyrifos, and other pesticides that would not pass muster in a European grocery aisle. The United States does not require coffee brands to list these chemicals on the label, and there is no organic line in the main Folgers portfolio. It is the classic case of don't ask, don't tell when it comes to what is really in the grounds. Independent consumer testing has found that non-organic coffees, especially big-name blends, often contain multiple pesticide residues. In broad market surveys, traces of glyphosate and its breakdown product AMPA show up again and again, even in brewed coffee. The Clean Label Project testing found AMPA in every single coffee they analyzed, organic or not. But conventional brands like Folgers are far more likely to source beans from farms where glyphosate is used as a standard tool. The red tub may be iconic, but it is built on a supply chain that prioritizes yield and shelf life over chemical transparency. Then there is Dunkin', not the cup you grab at the drive-thru, but the bags lining the grocery store aisle. These are produced under license by J.M. Smucker, the same company behind Folgers, using the same playbook: mass market, conventional beans, no USDA organic certification, and little public information about what is actually sprayed on the crop. Consumer advocacy tests have reported that conventional supermarket coffees can contain 2 or more different pesticide residues per bag, a chemical cocktail that gets brewed into every pot. For shoppers paying a premium for the Dunkin' logo, the reality is a mass-produced blend with all the risks of industrial agriculture, dressed up in branded packaging. Neither Folgers nor Dunkin' grocery coffee offers third-party lab reports for pesticide residues. Unlike specialty brands that post test results or carry organic seals, these market leaders operate in a regulatory gray zone, meeting legal requirements but leaving consumers in the dark about what is riding along with their caffeine. The red tub and the orange bag both promise a familiar taste, but behind the branding lies a conventional coffee supply chain built on chemical shortcuts. Decaf coffee sits on supermarket shelves with the promise of a gentler brew. But for many bargain brands, the real story is written in the fine print of industrial chemicals. Café Bustelo and Maxwell House, 2 of the country's most recognizable names, both offer decaf versions that rely on a method few shoppers ever consider: chemical solvent extraction. The process uses methylene chloride, a compound found in paint remover, to strip caffeine from green coffee beans. After soaking, the beans are rinsed and roasted, but traces of the solvent can remain in the finished product. Regulators in the United States set a legal ceiling for methylene chloride in decaf coffee, no more than 10 parts per million. Most brands fall well below this threshold, but independent tests by consumer advocacy groups have found that residues are still present. The Clean Label Project, a nonprofit that screens food and beverage products for hidden contaminants, tested dozens of decaf coffees and detected methylene chloride in several mainstream brands, including those sold under the Café Bustelo and Maxwell House labels. The average residue in these tests hovered around 3 parts per million, low enough to pass FDA scrutiny, but high enough to keep the debate alive among health-conscious buyers. The real issue isn't whether these levels break the law. It's the fact that, in 2024, a morning cup of decaf can still come laced with a solvent better known for stripping paint than preparing breakfast. For people choosing decaf to avoid the jitters, the trade-off becomes a hidden dose of industrial chemistry. While companies are not required to disclose their decaf process on the label, most conventional supermarket brands still use the cheapest method available. Safer alternatives, like the Swiss water process, use only water and activated carbon. No solvents, no lingering questions. A spokesperson for the Clean Label Project sums it up. If you're buying conventional decaf, you're probably getting a side of methylene chloride, whether you know it or not. Our advice is simple. Look for Swiss water process on the bag if you want to avoid solvents altogether. The science is clear enough, solvent residues are low, but they're present. The choice, for now, is left to the shopper standing in the coffee aisle, weighing price against purity. Convenience comes with a hidden price when coffee meets plastic and chemistry. Single-serve pods like Keurig K-Cups promise a fresh cup on demand, but the brewing process does more than extract caffeine. Hot water under pressure blasts through layers of plastic and filter, releasing not just coffee, but microscopic fragments of the pod itself. In 2022, laboratory tests found that a single K-cup brew could contain more than 1 billion microplastic particles, tiny shreds invisible to the eye, but impossible to ignore once you know they're there. These particles, measured in the range of 1.2 times 10 to the 9 per serving in some studies, don't just pass through. Microplastics have been detected in human blood, organs, and even placentas. Scientists like Dr. Rolf Halden, an environmental health expert at Arizona State University, warn that the real risk isn't just the plastic you can see, but the nanoplastics and chemical additives that slip past filtration and into the body. He puts it bluntly. The plastics industry never asked if these polymers belonged in our food chain. Now, we're the experiment. The story doesn't end with plastic. Nescafe Taster's Choice, the staple of break rooms and hotel lobbies, is a master class in instant gratification and instant chemistry. Instant coffee is made by brewing concentrated coffee and then spray drying it into crystals, a process that cranks up acrylamide formation. Acrylamide is a probable human carcinogen, flagged by California's Proposition 65 and tracked by food safety agencies worldwide. In recent analyses, instant coffee samples, including popular brands, routinely show acrylamide levels around 180 micrograms per kilogram, sometimes higher. For comparison, that's often double or triple the concentration found in regular ground coffee. The darker the roast, the less acrylamide remains, but instant coffee's industrial process locks in the risk. Regulators say coffee is not the main source of dietary acrylamide. Fried snacks and baked goods take that prize, but there's no established safe level for a compound linked to cancer in lab animals. The promise of speed and convenience in coffee now comes laced with questions about what else ends up in the cup. From plastic pods that leach microscopic debris to instant granules carrying a chemical warning, the modern coffee aisle serves up more than just caffeine. The next time you reach for a K-cup or a jar of instant, consider whether the price of convenience is worth swallowing a daily dose of uncertainty. Not every coffee brand leaves you guessing about what's in your cup. LifeBoost Coffee, for example, takes a different approach from the mass-market giants. Their founder, a former chiropractor who struggled with gut health, started the company with a simple goal: coffee that wouldn't cause trouble. LifeBoost sources single-origin beans from Nicaragua, grown under shade and certified organic. But it doesn't stop there. The company sends every batch to a third-party lab for testing. According to their published claims, those results show no detectable ochratoxin A, well below the European limit of 5 micrograms per kilogram. In fact, LifeBoost states their typical test results are under 0.1 micrograms per kilogram, and pesticide panels come back clean. While most brands keep their lab data private, LifeBoost makes a point to share summaries and certificates of analysis with customers who ask. That level of transparency is rare in the coffee world. Purity Coffee, another specialty brand, follows a similar playbook. They focus on organic beans and roast profiles designed to minimize acrylamide while maximizing beneficial compounds. Purity's products have earned Clean Label Project's Purity Award, which recognizes brands with low contaminant levels across multiple categories: acrylamide, mycotoxins, and heavy metals. The company claims every lot is tested for mold toxins and pesticides, and only beans that pass are roasted and shipped. This commitment to low contamination sets them apart. For those who want a cleaner cup but aren't looking to spend boutique prices, there are budget-friendly options too. Newman's own Organic Special Blend, for instance, is USDA organic and scored among the highest in Clean Label Project's independent testing for low contaminants. Costco's Kirkland Signature Organic Whole Bean offers another value pick. Its organic certification means synthetic pesticides like glyphosate are off the table, and the price per pound is hard to beat. These brands don't always publish detailed lab reports, but their organic status and strong third-party ratings put them a step above the usual supermarket fare. They provide a budget solution without compromising safety. From premium to practical, the spectrum is clear. Some companies invest in mold testing, pesticide screening, and third-party verification. Others rely on certifications and clean supply chains to keep risk low. The safest bet? Look for brands that are USDA organic, third-party tested for mold, and, if you're shopping for decaf, labeled Swiss water process. In a market crowded with chemical shortcuts, these are the brands that back up their claims with real proof. 3 simple rules can transform the way you buy coffee and protect what ends up in your cup. The first rule: always buy whole bean coffee. Pre-ground coffee loses flavor and freshness quickly, but that's not the only problem. Once beans are ground, the increased surface area gives mold and oxygen more opportunities to degrade quality. According to Nielsen data, only about 31% of U.S. households grind their own beans at home. That means most people are drinking coffee that's been sitting around for weeks or months, with more time for staleness and potential contaminants to build up. Grinding at home isn't just about taste. It's about minimizing the time between roast and cup and cutting down the risk of mold growth. Second, make USDA organic your baseline. Organic certification isn't just a marketing label, it's a legal guarantee that no synthetic pesticides like glyphosate were used on the crop. While organic doesn't mean zero residue, trace contamination can still happen through drift or processing. Independent testing shows that organic coffees almost always have fewer and lower pesticide residues than conventional beans. The Clean Label Project's screening of over 100 coffees found that non-organic brands were far more likely to test positive for multiple pesticide residues. Choosing organic coffee is the most reliable way to avoid the chemical cocktail that comes with mass-market blends. Third, if you drink decaf, look for the words Swiss water process on the bag. This method uses only water and activated carbon to remove caffeine, no methylene chloride, no ethyl acetate, no industrial solvents. The Swiss water process has grown rapidly in the last decade, with more than 5 million pounds of green coffee decaffeinated this way each year. Unlike conventional decaf, which can leave behind traces of chemical solvents, Swiss Water Decaf offers a clean cup by design. If the label doesn't specify Swiss water or CO2 process, assume it's solvent-based. These 3 rules, whole bean, organic, and Swiss water for decaf, aren't complicated, but they cut through the confusion of the coffee aisle. They're not just about avoiding the worst offenders, they're about building a daily habit that puts your health first. With these habits in place, every cup becomes a conscious choice, not a chemical gamble. Right now, the FDA does not require coffee brands to disclose pesticide, mold toxin, or chemical residue levels on their labels. As coffee remains a daily ritual for millions, that silence leaves consumers in the dark about what's really in their cup. Every sip is a choice, one that shapes your health, not just your morning. So, what will you brew tomorrow? Let me know in the comments.